Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Beyond the Saga. Dave Cottingham here with Hannah Burr. Good evening, Hannah. How are you?
I'm doing well, and how are you?
Doing good. Been a little bit since we've been able to knock one of these out.
Yes, it has.
I have been a little bit behind trying to catch up on my reading. Got done with a couple books, but right now we're going to knock out The Princess and the Scoundrel, which written by Beth Revis, came out August 16th of 2022, so not too long ago. And the interesting thing about this book is it takes place literally right after Return of the Jedi. They're still, in fact, on Endor when this thing picks up. And this is basically centered around the marriage of Han Solo and Princess Leia. So, Hannah, overall, what did you think about this book?
I think it showed a really great job as to why Han and Leia's marriage doesn't work out.
Oh, yeah.
Overall, I unfortunately am not the biggest fan of this book. I feel like the same trope is used over and over again. I thought the twist towards the end was very cool. Definitely liked that. It spiced up the book, but I feel like, especially for the first half of the book, it felt very much like propaganda for the Star Cruiser attraction in Walt Disney World. Yes, there are parts of it that had story points that are brought up, and then there's a payoff for them towards the end of the book. There are a few of those. But in general, it left me going, where is this going? Where is this story going? I felt like there wasn't really a direction until about midway through the book. And then suddenly, here we go. So I don't necessarily know how you would fix that. But yeah, this was not one of my favorites. But I did enjoy the spats they had. It does show the dysfunctional part of their relationship. I also really love the fact that there are two people reading this audiobook, one male voice, one female voice.
True.
So that was a nice touch as well. That being said, I think something else that was really done well in this book were the descriptors of scenery. Very good at verbally illustrating what we're supposed to see. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's my takeaway from it. And what about you?
I had a lot of the same feelings. I think, it took me a while to actually get through it because it didn't draw me in as much as some of these other books have done. And that's clearly an indicator of, for me, how much I enjoy something, really, because I listen to all of these, and if you're not drawing me in the first few chapters, it's a struggle for me to get through it. Unlike something like Shadow of the Sith or Brotherhood, I can remember like recently, like I was all in those, and I flew through those books. So I really couldn't get pulled away from them. So it didn't help that there was a big gap between trying to finish this thing out, but I did. I suffered through it all. Suffered is kind of a rough word, but I made it through it all. Oof. But you're right. I think there were a couple things about this thing that really stood out, and one was, this book did come out during the major marketing push for the Star Cruiser, the Halcyon, right? So you had the comic coming out, which was called the Legacy of the Halcyon. Showing the Halcyon through all these different eras, and then you've got this coming out to kind of centers around their honeymoon on the Halcyon. So, it was you can clearly kind of tell that it was like, here, Beth, write about the Halcyon. What do you want to do about that? Let's do Leia and Han's wedding. Okay, fine. Put it on the Halcyon kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Because there's really no other reason why to be on that ship, right? Besides pushing, like you said, advertising for this. So, but I did feel I'm highly interested in this part of the timeline, right? Post Return of the Jedi. We're a little further away from it in like the Mandalorian and things like that. The closest thing I believe besides this book has been like the Aftermath series, which doesn't really center around them as much. So I really am interested in stories with Han, Luke, and Leia right after Return of the Jedi. So I was really hopeful for this book, and I believe I believe I read it a long time ago, or at least I read parts of it. But this reminded me somewhat of the book called The Courtship of Princess Leia that came out in the EU.
Oh.
That takes place right after Return of the Jedi. I believe I could be either I read like the summary of it, or I remember. I just didn't read that many EU books then, but I kind of paid attention to them. And I remember there was The Courtship of Princess Leia, which I believe was Han, marrying Princess Leia. Mm-hmm. Did they get married in that book? I don't know. So EU fans, forgive me for not remembering. But that's what I felt like this was almost a kind of a retelling of that. Mm. Kind of telling us, like you said, where it started, which is right after Return of the Jedi. And obviously we saw kind of where it ended with the sequel trilogy. And so, the one thing that I guess that to me was, and I don't know how you feel about it. That was one thing right off the bat when I first watched The Force Awakens that I was a little upset to find out, is that Han and Leia were not really together. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you felt about that.
Oh, I was crushed. But that's also because I read the books and legends. So I was so used to the idea that they have this strong marriage and this solid relationship, and she's doing her political thing. He's still doing his scoundrel thing, but it's not as we see it in The Force Awakens. It's a lot more controlled, and they're also great parents to their kids. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I was absolutely heartbroken when I was like, wait, they're not together anymore?
Right. Yeah, I felt the same way. And so that kind of raises the question with this book in a sense where I guess you're trying to make this, you're trying to tell the story of them, kind of finding each other after the war and getting to, obviously it foreshadows that at the end of Return of the Jedi. It's like, it looks like they're going to be together. But it just seems like it's a rough marriage from the start. Yeah. And it kind of, we don't ever see them really truly together in love. And I don't know. And that's a little disappointing. 'Cause like you said, the EU was so good about them being together and having parents, and had a great relationship with Luke, and because obviously they don't even have a relationship with Luke, it seems like, post Return of the Jedi, from what we know what Luke does, right? He kind of goes on his own. Now I will say that was, to me, the best parts about this book was the small moments we got where Leia was thinking about whether or not she should go train with Luke. And there's a couple times where she felt like, am I using the Force, or is this what the Force, like she wasn't really sure. Like, I thought those were really good parts of the book?
Some of my other favorite parts of the book with regards to that is we clearly see the dark side of the Force calling out to her, and she slipping down so I thought the book was going to explore that and explore that possibility, and who knows, that could be the reason why when she started seeing in her son Ben what she was firsthand experiencing, that's why she immediately sent him to Luke or sent him to boarding school, because
right.
So I will say I did love those moments of the book as well.
Yeah, that's something I hope maybe we would get one day, is however long, which I think may have been maybe a year, maybe a little less, that time that she does spend training with Luke. It'd be awesome to kind of get that story on, maybe they go on a mission together and they, because something comes up and they're fighting together. The thought of them training together, and then, gosh, I wish they would have actually started the Jedi Order again together. Like, that would have been, God, that would have been so awesome. But of course that didn't happen. So those were definitely the parts that really kind of drew me in, was a lot of that stuff, and a lot of the main plots and stuff like that were happening. I just wasn't that interested in. There were a couple times where they were obviously in very hard and dire situations, but they're going to survive. So, it wasn't that bad, but I would, I wish the story was maybe a little bit more interesting. That's all.
And I think that's why the last last quarter of the book was so interesting, because of that sudden twist there.
Yeah, true.
Then all of a sudden it was like, oh, here we go. So that's why I feel like if that happened earlier on, if we maybe cut down the Halcyons part significantly, I think it would have helped move this along a lot better. And I think it would have been a more solid story.
And I agree with you about the audio book, although I did think, if you're going to use, because what they did, the chapters are set up as it alternates Han and Leia. And you had a male voice doing the Han chapters, and you had a female voice doing the Leia chapters. But what confused me was, well, if you were doing that, then why didn't you just have the female always be the voice of Leia and the male always be the voice of Han?
See, that didn't bother me. I understand what you're saying, but
because they did it in the last chapter.
Yeah, because it was from both Han and Leia's perspective. I guess I was okay with it because the chapters were from those characters' perspectives, and we always have voices that we make up for people in our heads. So
yeah.
So I wasn't upset about that.
When the last chapter was, because I think it was Han and Leia. That's why they combined them and they alternated male and female. I was like, man, I felt like that would have even just been more interesting, the whole book like that.
Yeah.
So
I could see that.
That was a little weird. Because you end up doing it later. Why didn't you just do it from the start? But they probably had them reading, separate times. So I get it. Okay. So overall, this timeline, this story, Han, Leia, I mean, how much of this, impacts the overall saga? Was this a story that needed to be told? What do you think?
I don't think. Well, I think part of it needed to be told because now we see. Okay, well now it makes sense why Han and Leia ended up divorcing. But outside of that, I don't really think it had that much impact.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is one that if you wanted to pass, you could, and not really
Yes.
feel anything, feel like you missed anything, or that you're not learning something about these characters that wouldn't be there later, as far as like any kind of thought process that they have. Like we see them in the sequels, and in later books. I don't know. I don't feel like there's going to be any kind of sequel to this book, So
I'll be shocked if there is.
yeah, I mean, there might be another story with them in it, but not really any kind of continuation from this. But so this is definitely one I don't think would be as impactful to these characters, Yeah. So what are you rating this thing?
A 2.
A 2. Ooh, okay.
A 2.
That is low. I don't know
I
if
think
you've
that's
ever
the
gone
lowest.
that low before.
I was about to
Have
say,
you?
I think that's the lowest. I think that's the lowest I've ever given. Because my 3s are like this. This does impact very middle of the road. Very, So it's
Yeah.
under that. That's why I gave it a 2.
Yeah, for me, it's like, if I really like something, it's a 4.
Mm-hmm.
If it's flawless to me, it's a 5.
I don't think we gave anything a 5 yet.
Oh, I think I gave Dark Disciple a 5.
Oh yeah, you probably.
And maybe Shadow of the Sith I might have given a 5.
Oh yeah, you might have. I think I gave it like a 4.75 or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and a 3. See, I don't do halves like you do. The threes are basically like, I liked it, but I didn't like it. So it's like, and 2. I mean, I don't know if I'd ever give anything a 1 necessarily.
No, I don't.
2
think
would
so.
be like if I really just didn't enjoy it. So I'll probably say this is a 3. I mean, I like some parts of it, but there's definitely things I didn't like about it. So I'll go 3. Okay. That's low for me. I do want to mention on this episode, this is our next episode. I mentioned this on our last Inside the Force episode, but we did have a comment specifically on our Beyond the Saga videos. So I wanted to kind of read it on this episode, just in case they don't listen to our normal show, which is fine. Hey, that's why we got different shows here. But it comes from a Katie Robinson on our YouTube channel, and Katie says, I just started reading the comics for the first time, and when I watch the shows, I always like to watch recaps and reviews because it helps me think about and remember what happened and better see the bigger picture of the story. I was afraid there wouldn't be anything out there like that for the comics, but then I found you all. I know it's old now, but thank you for doing this. It's exactly what I was looking for. And this was commented on the video of the first comic of the Star Wars series that we did. And then she replied to that and just says, I'm sure this has come up later, but I can borrow them digitally for free from my library with no wait, and I've been reading them on my iPad. It's free and easy, and it wouldn't be a feasible medium for me to dive into otherwise. So she's just mentioning that because I think we had talked about, I guess on that show, about where to get the comics or something like that. Mm-hmm. And you actually can get them from. In fact, I got on Facebook. Let me pull that up real fast. We've got someone in our Facebook group that mentioned that as well about. Let me be specific here because I think it was on the group, because they were commenting also that when we mentioned that comment on Inside the Force, talking about how it was Bianca. And she mentioned, comics from the library is fantastic. I use the Libby app and also put holds on physical copies of trades collections too. Using the library is a great way to catch up on older material. I did not know that. I have not been to a library since I believe I was in middle school, maybe. So, well, I had to go to a library in college, I guess, to do research. But yeah, I did not know they had a plethora of comics, apparently.
Who knew?
Who knew? I mean, that is great. I mean, what am I doing buying all this stuff? But I do collect them.
I was about to say, you're a collector, so
I like them on my shelves. So I will get the digital copies, and then I'll buy the trades and put them on my shelf back there. So but anybody else out there looking to get into comics? Yeah, go to your local library, check them out, and see if you can get into them, and then come watch us on Beyond the Saga, and we'll talk all about them. Which we do got to get into more comics. We've talked about that. We got some on our list. So we will continue to dive into those. In fact, I think we're going to be starting. There's a couple comics like just one-off stories that we want to dive into here soon. One of them being the Jedi Fallen Order comic that's been out there from the first game, but the second game is about to launch. So kind of want to dive in because you haven't read that one yet, I don't think, right?
I just read it.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So we'll do that, and we'll get that out there for everybody before the game comes out, which is next week. The game drops next weekend. Not this coming weekend, but next weekend. Can't wait for that. And then we've definitely got some other books. We actually have the Jedi Fallen Order book. I just started that a few days ago. Battle Scars. I'm liking the feeling of that one already.
It totally feels like you're playing, like you're reading someone playing a video game.
Yeah, just the first couple chapters alone felt like I'm watching a video game. Yes. So, I can't wait to finish that. And then I'm really looking forward to us breaking down the next Star Wars comic series, which takes place between Empire and Jedi. So, lots going on there in those comics. So, interesting enough. Because, I keep seeing kind of foreshadowing or maybe semi-spoiler, but, because that series is still going on right now. It's ongoing. And Luke, I noticed, because you remember, Luke loses his lightsaber in The Empire Strikes Back. But on all these covers during this comic series between Return of Jedi or Return of Empire and Return, Luke's got a yellow lightsaber on the cover. So I was like, wait a minute.
What?
When did this happen? So that's what we've got to dive into because I don't know. I haven't read it yet.
Okay.
So anyway, we will get into this.
Yes.
Well. All right. Again, thanks everybody for listening, for watching. Of course, we are on YouTube right here with Beyond the Saga. We've got other shows on this channel if you want to stick around and see those, Council Sessions and Dark Knowledge and Beyond the Saga. And, of course, our weekly show, Inside the Force, on here as well as on the podcast feed. So get on the podcast feeds to get us every week, Inside the Force, where we talk all things Star Wars and everything else. And then, of course, patreon.com/Inside the Force. You want to get some extra content on there. Thank you, Hannah, as always.
Thank you, Dave, as always.
We'll see you next time. And thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. Go get some Star Wars. Talk to you next time. May the Force be with you.